Hey, and welcome to a little review video about the game Valkie 64. On the first look, you might think this is a mod for Ocarina of Time, but no, it's actually an original game that just takes a tiny teensy itsy bitsy of inspiration from it, which is a good thing, but it can also be a fairly bad thing. I just absolutely love the aesthetic after a friend linked me a Twitter post about this game, and it reminded me about the good old times when I was playing Ocarina of Time with a friend together, and when I saw it was just $5 on Steam, I just had to buy it regardless of the quality. At worst, I would have regretted not using this money to maybe buy myself some snackies, maybe a pizza, maybe a nice pair of cute panties, or something else that's more useful than a bad video game. In the end, I got a fairly mixed game. Like I said, I love the aesthetic, especially a Nintendo 64 Zelda game with a cute anime girl as the main character. How could that be bad? On the other hand, the gameplay is a bit of a letdown, and maybe this will help more people to temper their expectations, because it's not really exactly like Zelda, and there's only so much you should expect for a game that costs around $5. There's a little bit of story to start, and then boom, you basically just get thrown into the hub world, and from there you can choose 4 different worlds. You can go anywhere you want, but it's not really recommendable. The first world you should choose is the forest one, which also has a little combat tutorial dojo at the start of it. At this dojo you can learn a little bit about the combat, you can read about it, you can buy new upgrades for your potions, you can even buy a new combo, because the game actually has combos. But basically you can slash vertically with your sword or horizontally. Vertically is obviously for enemies that can fly, which there's only one flying enemy really in the game, but I will come to that later. And like I said, you can combo with them. Also you can do a cool attack where you jump into the air, draw your sword and then bonk the enemies on your head. But the combat style is pretty simple throughout the game, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's still also a little bit janky. Sometimes the hitboxes don't really quite work. The way you dodge, it makes you think you got hit but you didn't got hit. And basically the best way to fight is log onto the enemy, hit them once or twice, dodge backwards, and do it again until you beat them, which gets a bit stale, and sadly that's all you can do since there's no other combat options or ways to kill enemies. And the bad thing is, most enemies will also be the same, so you keep finding the same reskinned enemies, and again, you shouldn't expect too much from a €5 game, but it would have been nice to have a little bit more variety. Every time you go into one of these levels from the hub worlds, there's basically 2 things you can do. There's always like 2 lines. You can either head straight to the dungeon or to the place where people live, like a village, a hut, whatever, where people live, so they can give you side quests that consist of like finding things for them or bringing them their kids back, saving one of their villagers. And basically, there's not that much variation, and most of the time you will just get 1 heart piece in return for the quest, which in this game, instead of having 4 heart pieces, and it forms a full container, you only need 2. And you basically get lots of life pretty quickly. The levels themselves are fairly small and don't leave too much room for exploration, sadly though. I still enjoyed walking through them though, because they gave you this nostalgic feeling of actually walking through an Ocarina of Time map. Look at the map on the bottom right, it kinda looks like straight out of Ocarina of Time. And the UI too, obviously it looks way more amateurish like, because it is made by an amateurish game maker. You can't perfectly compare to Ocarina of Time, but it still gives you a nice feeling that it somehow feels like it, even though it's not the same, which I think is a nice thing. Obviously, if you don't have any nostalgic feelings for this kind of art style or Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, it could be one of those things where you are just gonna be left cold and you don't feel anything from it except poo. And let's get to the most important part in any Zelda game, at least for me, the dungeons. The dungeons here are a little bit too straightforward and not very Zelda-like at all. They don't feel like mazes. Basically, they're all very linear for the most part and only require you to press a switch or kill all enemies in the room, and then it opens again already, and or maybe find a chest with a key in it, and it will only appear if you kill all the enemies or press the switch. There's not a single simple puzzle that, for example, requires you to push a box or anything like that. A few like that would have been nice. It doesn't feel like a Zelda dungeon without actual puzzles. At least the last real dungeon in the game, which by the way has a really bad boss who also bugged out for me once and made me want to quit the game, feels more like a real dungeon. And it has an okay mechanic, which mostly just a time waste though, and it's basically just Twilight Princess's desert dungeon, but in way worse. But that's maybe on me, because I expected something more, because in this game you don't get any other items. You don't get a bow, you don't get bombs, no slingshot. You just get your sword and that's it. You can buy some potions and you can upgrade those with the dojo scrolls, and there's a few hidden items that you can get by doing some side quests, but overall you don't get this feeling of wow, a new item, which is also one of those things that made Zelda so great for me. But again, that's probably on me for expecting a little bit like that but not getting it. So it's not that Zelda-like at all in this kind of way. I needed around 4 hours to beat the game, even though I spent around 45 minutes on a single boss and farming some money to buy some upgrades for my life potion, that in the end I didn't even need because I was somehow able to beat the boss suddenly without taking any damage almost after I just bought it, because I got stuck in it. Also, you have to get out of the dungeon yourself every time you beat the boss. If you already take so much inspiration from a Zelda game, why not also make you teleport out of the dungeon after beating it? You know, every time you beat a boss in a Zelda game, you can take your heart container and get the heck out with the teleporter. Here, you have to walk out of the dungeon. So basically, in the end, I can say I got 1 buck for each hour that I played, which isn't a bad way to spend it, you know, 4 hours for 4 bucks. Would I recommend it? Well, it's one of those hard cases. I would say not really, except if you really love the aesthetics of this game and can endure some of the jank, and if you also play the Zelda games on the Nintendo 64. Obviously, like I said, they're not that similar at all, despite the aesthetic and having dungeons and things like that. But it's a nice way to spend maybe an afternoon, as long as you don't get tilted like I did from one of the bosses. And if you play the game, if you decide to play it and buy it, you will probably notice which boss I meant. And, you know, I kind of wanted a little bit more out of this game. But again, you know, there's only so much you can expect, I guess. And maybe, you know, this review will help someone not to buy it. Or maybe, you know, you will see the gameplay and think, wow, I will buy it now. Or you will think, wow, this guy has such a bad opinion. I'm gonna buy the game because I will go against his opinion. Regardless of what you do, have a nice day.